What's up, YouTube? Hope everybody's doing good. If you're from down here in Texas where I'm at, then you know the last couple days it's been freezing cold during the night and part of the daytime. So I haven't really been able to do any fishing. I'm limited on the times I can fish already, but with the freezing cold weather and it kind of raining and stuff here and there, I haven't been able to fish at all. So I figured I'd hop on here and make this video real quick. It's just going to be a video of me kind of ranting about basically how, like, the best way to swap from fishing with like live or dead bait to fishing with strictly artificials. I know it was like super tough for me. I grew up as a kid fishing with my dad, you know, fishing with like live shrimp, dead shrimp, cut bait, you name it. And occasionally I'll still do that when my dad comes down to fish, or if I take my daughter fishing with me, just because, you know, it's like easier to fish with, right? But for me, I've been fishing with artificials 90% of the time for probably the past, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 years. And to me, it's more challenging. It's a lot more rewarding. I don't have to deal with stinky bait all over my hands and stuff like that. So I think it's I like it a lot better. It is challenging though, right? So one of the biggest challenges, one of the things you have to really tell yourself is when you go out to fish, I mean, even with like live bait or dead bait, right? There's a chance you won't catch any fish, but especially when you first start fishing with strictly artificials, it's just going to be a lot more tough to catch fish. And what kind of really helped me make my decision to just swap over to artificials is you catch more quality fish, like, for the most part. I mean, you can still catch quality fish on live bait and stuff like that, but rarely ever do you catch a gaff top or a hard head on an artificial lure. And so that was one of the big reasons. And you don't have to go stop at the bait camp every time you want to go fish. I'll kind of talk about fishing with strictly artificial, being able to fish from like a boat or a kayak, something that you can kind of move around on the water in, and then talk about it when you're bank fishing, because bank fishing is a lot harder. And so something you have to be willing to do when you're fishing with artificials is you have to be willing to get up and move. You don't want to just fish for 5 minutes and get up and move to the next spot immediately because you didn't catch a fish. But you know, when you're in a boat or kayak, whatever, you have to be willing to, you know, sometimes you have to be willing to stick to an area and just, if you have a feeling fish are there, it looks fishy, or you just, you know fish are there, stay there and grind it out and try to get on some fish. But sometimes you get to an area, you start fishing, and you can just tell, you know, and with more experience and time, you get better at it. I'm no expert, but, you know, the more you do it, the more you can kind of gauge if you should stay there or not, you know. And so, but you do have to be willing to move around to try to find the fish. And where that becomes difficult is when you're bank fishing. If you go to an area and you start fishing and you're struggling to catch fish, you got to pack your stuff up, throw it in the truck, and, you know, move on to the next spot. But I used to do it all the time. I used to work shift work, and when I get off work, man, I would just, you know, for an hour or two, I'd stop at a couple of my different spots, and sometimes I'd stop at the first spot and never leave till I was ready to go home because I'd be catching fish. And then other times I'd hit 4 different spots and never catch a single fish. You know, it just depends on the day and time and what the tide's doing, and, you know, there's a lot of factors that play into it. One other thing I want to talk about real quick is like the type of artificial bait, at least on the Gulf Coast in Texas, the artificial bait that I would kind of start with and use it as a confidence builder is basically just a paddle tail on a jig head, like an 1/8 ounce jig head, whatever, you know, 16th ounce, 1/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce, whatever you end up. the more you do it, the better you'll get at deciding, you know, what size jig head you want to throw. And that depends on different factors too. How deep is the water? How windy is it? How strong is the current moving? I tend to throw 1/8 ounce to 1/4 ounce. I rarely will ever throw a 1/16 ounce, but I know a lot of people that do. A lot of people say the lighter the jig head, the more realistic it looks and the more fish you'll catch. But yeah, I prefer an 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce jig head. And another a bait that I started with that really helped me build confidence, which it's kind of, you know, I was talking about earlier, not having to deal with like stinky bait and stuff. This is an artificial lure that stinks like hell. But I will tell you, it catches fish. Like there's no doubt about it. And sometimes it'll be like a little piggy perch or sand trout that'll nip at it. Crabs will even try to bite it. But it definitely catches fish, and it can be a confidence builder. Is this right here is Gulp. I rarely fish with it anymore, but I normally will have some of my tackle box, and I'll use it kind of as a last-ditch effort if I'm really just struggling to catch fish. I will, every once in a while, I'll throw one on and fish with it. Normally before that, though, I'll take just a regular soft plastic and take what's called ProCure shrimp and squirt some of that on there. And it's like an oily shrimp scented substance. And I'll just put that on there, and that definitely helps catch fish too. Yeah, those are kind of the main things. And one thing I struggled with, like in my transition from bait to strictly artificial, is I have a boat and now I have a couple kayaks that I normally fish off of. I'll bank fish sometimes also, but I used to fish out of my boat a ton, and it took me a long time to finally just leave the bait at home, or just to not get any live or dead bait. I would, for the first, I don't know, year or two, I would always at least have like some dead mullet or maybe some live or dead shrimp, just in case I was like struggling to catch fish on the artificials. I would use it as like a safety net, like it was a fallback onto that. And a lot of times I would end up catching like gaff top or hard heads on that stuff. And so it was like kind of frustrating. And so eventually one day I just decided, you know what? It's tougher, it's a bigger challenge, but I really want to learn how to catch fish on an artificial lure. And the way to do it is to tell yourself you have to be content with going out there and not catching a single stinking fish. But every time you go out there, you will learn something new. Even if you don't catch a single fish, you just try to learn something. What are you looking at? What do you see that tells you there's not fish? Or if you catch fish, what were the signs? Make a journal. And I have a journal. I've like, I think 4 years going right now, or I'm in my 4th year. But every time I go fishing, whether I catch a fish or not, I put the conditions, the tide, the location I was at, what type of fishing I was doing, what I was fishing with, how many fish I caught or didn't catch, the temperature, the moon phase. Even sometimes some people are big on the pressure changes. I'm not. I don't really look at the pressure. I do look at the moon and the tide and the wind. But stuff like that is something that you can learn from. So that's really all I have. But if y'all have any questions down in the comments below on switching from act like real bait to fishing with artificial lures or anything like that, just put it down in the comments below and I'll help to answer any questions. I hope if you decide to stop fishing with live bait and only start fishing with lures, that you catch a ton of fish. All right, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.